Hey guys, in today's video I'll be teaching you how to crochet a Valentine's Day themed gnome. I got this idea when I was scrolling through Instagram and I saw that Target was selling these cute gnomes and I thought might as well make a crochet version, and this is what I came up with. I'll insert a picture of the one that Target is selling. I feel like I definitely could have made this look a little bit better. I tried to make it look like the one that Target has, but I didn't feel like adding the feet because I was being lazy. And also he looks like he's on the verge of being a wizard or a Santa Claus, but I think he's still cute. Plus I already made two for the hospice, so I don't want to change my pattern. But this was my first guy and he definitely doesn't have enough hair for his beard, so I changed that up on the second one. But I didn't change up too much, which I was happy about because sometimes I just hate working with patterns that I have to do too much work on. But this is what they look like. He is well-rounded, we can say, all over. But if you're interested in making one of these, I'll let you know what you'll need in the next couple of clips. I'll be using a 4.5mm crochet hook, a stitch marker, threading needle, and scissors. For my yarn, I'm using 3 different colors. I have 2 shades of pink. This one is Bubblegum by Big Twist. I don't remember the name of this. This also isn't the same shade as the one I showed you in the beginning of the video. This gnome is in the color Watermelon by Big Twist. I'm just using a different one because I don't feel like using watermelon today. And then you also need some white for the beard. Well, you can use any color you like. You can be creative. It doesn't have to be the same exact shades, but this lighter pink is going to be for the nose and the hand, and then the darker shade of pink is going to be for the rest of the body and the hat. For the hearts on top of my hat, I will be using some red felt today, but I did use white on my other ones, but feel free to use any color you like. And lastly, we will need some stuffing. I almost forgot to mention this, but you also need a glue gun. We're going to be working from the bottom up, which means we're starting off with the body first. So take whatever color you plan to use. For me, it's going to be my darker pink. And today I don't really feel like showing the magic circle because I'm just not into it today. So I will be showing the other alternative, which is easier. If you know how to do the magic circle, you can go ahead and do that. But I'm going to start off with a slip knot, because we're going to make a chain. So what I like to do is I hold my yarn in half like this, so you can see one on each side, and then I'm just going to grab onto it. I'm going to twist it, and you see I have this loop right here. I'm just going to go in and grab this yarn and pull it through the loop. And that is a slip knot. Now we have to create a chain. We're doing a chain of 2, so I just pull on my yarn and then it is now closely on my hook. So I'm going to yarn over for a chain. I'm going over, pulling through for 1. I have to do a chain of 2, so I have to do that one more time. I'm going to yarn over and pull through. And that is how we start off. Now we're going to single crochet 6 times into the first chain, and then if you're doing the magic circle, just single crochet 6 times into the circle. So this is my second chain, which is closest to the hook. The first one is right next to it, so this one right here, I'm just going to go in and we're doing a single crochet. So that's just going in, I'm pulling my yarn through. I have 2 loops on the hook. I'm going to yarn over and pull through both. That was 1 single crochet. I need to do a total of 6, which means I have 5 left, and we're doing it into the same chain. So I'm going to go in again, pull through, and then I have 2 loops on my hook. I'm yarning over, pulling through both. So I'm going to demonstrate that one more time before I speed this up. So a single crochet, we're going into the same chain. So going into that same one, pulling this yarn through. I have 2 loops on my hook. I'm yarning over, pulling through both. So now I'm just going to speed this up until I get 6 in total, which means I have to do 3 more. Now that I single crocheted 6 times into the first chain, I'm just going to remove my hook really quick and insert my stitch marker, and you are now done with round 1. Round 2, we're going to increase into every stitch with a single crochet. So let's go into our first stitch, and we're just going to go into that stitch. So just push through with your hook, grab this yarn and pull it through. We have 2 loops on the hook. Let's yarn over and pull through both. That was 1 single crochet. And increase, you have to do 1 more into the same stitch. So going into the same stitch, going in, pulling this yarn through, 2 loops on my hook, yarning over and pulling through both. So that was an increase into the first stitch. We have to do that into the rest of these, and we're going to end up with 12 stitches total in round 2. Now before I speed this up, I will demonstrate one more time. So an increase is going into our next stitch, Let's go in, push your hook through the stitch, grab this yarn and pull it through. We have 2 loops on the hook. Let's yarn over and pull through both loops. That was 1 single crochet. I need to do 1 more into the same stitch. So just going in to that same stitch, grabbing this yarn and pulling it through, 2 loops on the hook, yarning over and pulling through both. So now I'm just going to repeat that all the way through until I get my 12 stitches total in round 2. When you increase into the last stitch on round 2, all you have to do is now place your stitch marker into that last single crochet you did. Now also, because we did the chain 2 method, we have this little opening here, and we cannot adjust that because we did not do the magic circle, but honestly it's fine with me today. What you can do is just take the color of your yarn when you're stuffing it and probably just place it at the bottom so you don't notice too much, but that is what happens when we do the chain 2 method instead of the magic circle. Today it's not really bothering me because I feel like I've been working on too many projects with the magic circle, so just needed a little break from it. Now moving on to round 3, we're going to increase into the first stitch. So here's my first stitch and I'm going in. An increase is what we did in our last round, so let's just take our yarn and pull it through. We have 2 loops on the hook. I'm yarning over, pulling through both loops. I'm going to do that 1 more time into the same stitch because this is an increase. Now into the next stitch we have to do 1 single crochet. So here's my next stitch. Let's go in and just do 1 single crochet. Now you have to repeat those 2 steps all the way through until you get 18 stitches in total, and before I speed my process up, I will demonstrate 1 more time. So going into the next stitch, we have to start off with an increase. So I'm going in, there's my 2 loops, yarning over, pulling through both. That was 1. I have to do an increase, which means I'm doing another single crochet into that same stitch. Now moving on to the next stitch, I'm just going to do 1 single crochet. Now I'm going to repeat those 2 steps all the way through until I get my 18 stitches total. For this round, I do want to just show the ending of it. I'm just going to remove my stitch marker, and at the stitch marker you should have 1 single crochet left because that makes it your 18th stitch. And now let's take our stitch marker and place it back into the last stitch, and now we are done with round 3. Round 4, we're going to increase into the first stitch. So here's my first stitch. Let's just go in with our increase. That was my first single crochet. I'm doing my second one into the same stitch. Now we're going to single crochet into the next 1, 2 stitches. So into each of those, let's just do 1 single crochet. Now going on to my next one to do 1 single crochet. Okay, so now that we do that, we have to repeat those steps all the way through until we get 24 stitches in total, and I will demonstrate 1 more time. So going into my next stitch, I'm going in with an increase. That was 1 single crochet, doing another one into the same stitch. Now into the next 1, 2 stitches, I'm going to do 1 single crochet. So going in for my first. Now going on to the next stitch to do another single crochet. And now I'm just going to repeat that all the way through until I get 24 stitches in total in round 4. Round 5, we're doing another increasing row, so let's start off with an increase into the first stitch. So here's my first stitch. I'm going in with my first single crochet, now doing my second one into the same stitch. Now we're going to single crochet into the next 1, 2, 3 stitches. So into each of those, let's just do 1 single crochet. There's the 2 loops, yarning over, pulling through both, doing my last one. This is another single crochet. And now we have to repeat that all the way through until we get 30 stitches in total, and I will demonstrate 1 more time. So going into my next stitch, I'm going in with an increased first. So I just did one single crochet, doing another one into the same stitch because this is an increase. Now I have to single crochet into the next 1, 2, 3 stitches. Again, this is just one single crochet into each of those. Going into my third one, doing the single crochet. And now I'm going to repeat this all the way through until I get 30 stitches in total in this round. Round 6 is really simple. We're just single crochet into each one of the stitches, which means there's going to be no stitch count change. We're still going to end up with 30 stitches in total for round 6. Remember, just single crochet into each one, and we've been doing a single crochet this entire time, so I will finish the rest of this off camera. Alrighty, moving on to round 7, which is our last increasing round. We're going to start this off the same way by going into our first stitch with an increase. So let's go in. We're doing one single crochet and another one into the same stitch because this is an increase. Now we're going to single crochet into the next 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches. So let's just go in and do one single crochet into each of those. I just did my second one. I'm doing my third and my fourth. Now we have to repeat those 5 steps all the way through until we get 36 stitches in total for round 7. And of course I will demonstrate one more time. So let's go into our next stitch with an increase. So I just did my first single crochet, doing my second one into the same stitch. And now I'm going to single crochet into the next 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches. So going in with my first, my second, my third, and finally my fourth. So now I'm just going to repeat those steps all the way through until I get my 36 stitches in total. Finish round 7. This is what it should start to look like. And now we're going to move on to rounds 8 to 15. For these rounds, all we're doing is single crocheting, so nothing is going to be changing. We're just going to be creating the length of the body. So that means you're still going to end up with 36 stitches in total. And I won't demonstrate all of this on camera because they're all just single crochets, so literally what we've been doing. And remember, this is rounds 8 to round 15. This is just for the length, and I will finish the rest of this off camera, and I'll be back once I finish those rounds. And I believe there are a total of 8 rounds, but again, it's rounds 8 to round 15, all single crochets. I probably should have shown this in the beginning of the video, but if you wanted to see the pattern, this is what it does look like. I usually never show my written stuff because I'm very messy. As you can see, I don't type anything out. I just handwrite it, and I'm not very detailed because it's usually just for myself. And also, I don't really consider myself a professional crocheter. I'm not even that good. I just make stuff for fun for the hospice. But I know some people do ask for the written, and this is what it looks like. Here's the hat part. But again, this is not very detailed. I mean, I'm already making the video, so I usually feel like I don't have to show you guys the written stuff. But yeah, I mean, one day I always tell myself I'm going to type this up, but I just never do. I just keep it in my little notepad. After rounds 8 to 15, this is what it looks like. You have your length of the body. So we can now move on to our decreases. So I will show you the invisible decrease, and if you watch my older videos, you know that I used to do it a different way, but I'll show you the other method I do now. So for round 16, let's start off with an invisible decrease. We're working into these 2 stitches right here, and what we're first going to do is we're going to bend our hook down, and we're going into the front loop only of this first stitch. So I'm just going to poke my hook through, and I'm going to go through the middle. So that's what it looks like. I have 2 loops on the hook. Now I'm just going to bend my hook down, and I'm going to do the same thing to the next stitch. So it's going to be a little bit difficult to maneuver, but just bend your hook down, go into the front loop only of your next stitch. So you're just doing the same exact thing you just did with that first one. So now that you have 3 loops on the hook, let's yarn over and pull through the first 1, 2 loops. Now you have 2 loops left on the hook. Let's yarn over and pull through the last 2 loops. and that was our first invisible decrease. Now we're going to single crochet into the next 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches. So I'll go ahead and do that. I'm just doing 1 single crochet into each of those, and we're doing normal single crochets, so just go through your entire stitch. And here is my 4th one. So I will have to repeat those steps all the way through until I get to 30 stitches, and I will demonstrate the decrease one more time. So let's go in with our invisible decrease. Here are our 2 stitches we're going to work into. So what we first have to do is just bend your hook down. You want to go into the front loop only of the stitch, which means I'm going to poke through the middle. And I'm at the front loop. I'm going to do the same thing to the next stitch over. So I'm just going to bend my hook down, and I'll push through just the front loop only. Now I'm going to yarn over and pull through the first 2 loops. So that was 1, 2. I have 2 loops left. I'm going to yarn over and pull through the last 2. Now I'm going to single crochet into the next 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches. So just 1 single crochet into each of those. Now I have to repeat these 5 steps all the way through until I get 30 stitches in round 16. Right, so after your decreasing round, that was round 16, you have your 30 stitches. Moving on to round 17, this one is simple because all we're doing is just single crocheting this entire round, which means you're still just ending up with 30 stitches in total because we're not changing anything. After finishing my single crochet round, we're going back to our invisible decrease. So this is round 18. Let's start off with an invisible decrease into these first 2 stitches here. That's where we're going to work into. So let's bend our hook down and let's go into the front loop only. So I'm going to poke my hook through and I'm going straight through the middle. Now I'm going to bend my hook down again and do the same thing to the next stitch over. So I'm just going to go down, poke my hook through the middle. Now I have my 3 loops on the hook. I'm yarning over, pulling through the first 2 loops. I have 2 loops left on the hook, so let's yarn over and pull through both. Now we're going to single crochet into the next 1, 2, 3 stitches. So just 1 single crochet into each of those. And now you have to repeat those steps until you get to 24 stitches in total in this round. And I will demonstrate one more time. So let's go into these 2 stitches here with our invisible decrease. So bending my hook down, poking my hook through the middle, and I just got through the front loop. So I'm going to do the same thing to the next stitch over, bending my hook down, going straight through the middle. I now have 3 loops on the hook, so I'm just taking my yarn and I'm pulling it through the first 2 loops. I'm yarning over again and pulling through the last 2. Now I'm going to single crochet into the next 1, 2, 3 stitches. So just 1 into each of those. And then when I repeat this over, I'll get my 24 stitches. So I'll just finish this part off camera and then I'll be back with our next rounds. Here is what the body looks like after I finish that decreasing round. This is going to start to look like an egg soon. And if you want to stuff this now, you can go ahead and do that. But if you watch my videos, you know that I always wait until like the last minute possible. But after this, let's single crochet rounds 19 and 20. So that's just 2 rounds of single crochets, which means you're having the same stitch count because we're not changing anything. So in rounds 19 and 20, you're going to end up with 24 stitches in each of those rounds. And because this is just a single crochet, I will finish this off camera and then I will have it stuffed after round 20, and then we can get on to our next decreasing round. I just finished rounds 19 and 20 and I also stuffed up the body. So now let's go on to round 21 where we're going to do our next decreasing round. So let's go into our first 2 stitches here and we're going in with an invisible decrease. So again, that means going into the front loop only of that first stitch. Then I'm bending my hook down and I'm doing the same thing to the next stitch over. Now that I have 3 loops on my hook, I'm yarning over and pulling through the first 2 loops. I have 2 loops left on the hook, so I'm yarning over and pulling through the last 2. Now I have to single crochet into the next 1, 2 stitches. And then I have to repeat those 3 steps until I end up with a total of 18 stitches in round 21, but I will demonstrate that one more time. So going into my next 2 stitches, we're doing our invisible decrease. So I'm just pushing my hook through the front loop. I'm going down, doing the same thing to the next stitch over. I have my 3 loops on the hook. I'm yarning over, pulling through the first 2 loops, yarning over, pulling through the last 2. Now I have to single crochet into the next 1, 2 stitches, and then I'm going to repeat this until I get my 18 stitches, and I'll be back for our next decreasing round. We're almost done with the body, but now we need to move on to round 22, and we're going to start off with a decrease. And this time I'm doing a normal decrease because it's towards the top and it's going to be covered anyways. But for a normal decrease, we're just going through the entire stitch. So I'm just going to push through that stitch, and then I'm going to pull some of this yarn through. I have 2 loops on my hook. Now I'm going to do the same thing into the next stitch over. So here's the next stitch, pushing my hook through, grabbing this yarn, and I have 3 loops on my hook. Now I'm going to yarn over and pull through all 3. Then I have to single crochet into the next stitch. So here's my next stitch, going in with 1 single crochet. So I have to repeat those 2 steps all the way through until I get 12 stitches total. So I'm running out of storage space, but I'm going to show a decrease one more time before I go and download everything. So with these 2 stitches, we're going in with a decrease. So let's take our crochet hook, push it in, grab this yarn and pull it through. And then going into the next stitch, I'm doing the same thing. Remember, this is a normal decrease. Pulling through. I have 3 loops on the hook. I'm yarning over and pulling through all 3. So next I just have to single crochet into the next stitch, and then I'll be repeating this until I get 12 stitches in total. On to our last decrease round. So I did remove my stitch marker because this is the last round, and for this round we're just going to decrease 4 times. So let's go into our next stitch. We're doing a normal decrease and we're going to pull some yarn through. Then going into the next stitch, you're doing the same exact thing. We have 3 loops on the hook. Let's yarn over and pull through all 3. And then I just have to do that 3 more times. And if you're wondering why I'm going fast, it's because I'm trying not to use up all my data yet, or storage space. So I'm just going to do my last one off camera and then I'll be back. Okay, so after you finish your 4 decreases, you can now cut your yarn, leave some excess so we can finish this closure. Now what we're going to do is just pull your yarn straight out and we're going to weave this in. So take your crochet hook, and where you last had your yarn, you're going to insert your hook into the next stitch, and you're going to grab this yarn and pull it through. And then you want to repeat that into the next stitch. So just take your crochet hook, insert it into the stitch, grab this yarn and pull it through. And I'm just going to do that until I make it to my original starting point. Okay, so once you make it to the beginning, you can now pull on your yarn and it closes it up. And then you're going to take your crochet hook and insert it into the next stitch. So you can see my hook is through the next stitch. I'm grabbing this yarn and I'm pulling it through, but I don't pull it all the way. You see how I have this loop on my hook? I mean, this loop here. We're going to take our yarn and put it through the loop. And then just secure it. Now I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to stuff this yarn back in. And now I'm going to have to edit some stuff, and then I'll have to refilm, or I have to film the other parts later. So if you see a different setup, that's why. But I'm just going to stuff this and then I'll be back later to finish the rest. Well, you don't even really need to know that because I'm editing. Now that we have our body finished, we can set this aside, but before I set it aside, doesn't this look like an egg? I feel like I should keep this part of the pattern and use it for Easter time and just decorate it. But let's go ahead and move on to the nose. For the nose, take your second shade of pink or whatever color you're deciding to use, and we're going to start off with our slip knot. Now, if you know how to do the magic circle, I suggest you do that instead, because the nose, you will be able to see it clearly on the face, but I'm going to do the chain method because I'm keeping it in line with how we started off. So first, let's just take our yarn, and I like to fold mine in half. So this is how we started. We're going to grab our yarn and twist it. Now we have a loop on this side, so what you're going to do is just take the yarn and pull it through. So then I'll take my crochet hook and insert it inside the loop and pull on the yarn. Next, we're going to chain 2. So to chain, you have to yarn over your hook and pull through the loop. So that was 1. I have to do that one more time. So I'm yarning over and pulling through. So that was my second chain. Next, we're going to single crochet into the first chain. So the first chain is this one right here, and I'm just going to go in, pull some yarn through. We have 2 loops on the hook. Let's yarn over and pull through both. Now, because I have shown this already, I'm not going to demonstrate it again. I'm just going to go straight in and finish my last 5 single crochets into the first chain. Once you finish single crocheting 6 times into the first chain, you're going to take your stitch marker and place it into your last stitch, and you are now done with round 1. Round 2, we're going to increase into the first stitch. So here's my first stitch. Let's just go in with our first single crochet. Oops, I had that yarn split. Okay, so going in with my first single crochet and my second into the same stitch, because this is an increase. And now you have to repeat that all the way through until you get 12 stitches total. So it's just an increase into every stitch. So going into my next one, I just did my first single crochet, and I'll do another one into the same stitch because we are doing increases throughout this entire round. Okay, so after round 2, this is what it looks like. For round 3 and 4, you're just going to single crochet those entire rounds because we're just going to make this start to curve a bit after we do these 2 rounds. So that means you're still going to end up with 12 stitches in total because we're not increasing or decreasing. We're just doing our normal single crochets for round 3 and 4. After rounds 3 and 4, this is what the nose starts to look like. So we have to do a decreasing round so we can make this curve back in. And this round is also our last round. This is round 5 right now. That's why I removed my stitch marker, because this is our last round. So we're going to do a decrease, and we're going to do our normal decrease. So we're going into these first 2 stitches here, and I'm just going to take my crochet hook, insert it in, pull this yarn through. And then I have 2 loops on my hook. I'm going into the next stitch after, and I'll do the same thing. Push it through, grab this yarn. I have 3 loops on the hook. I'm going to yarn over and pull through all 3. I need to decrease for a total of 5 times. I already did 1, so I'll show that one more time. So going into our next 2 stitches, first I'm going to go into the first one, push my hook through, pull the yarn. I have 2 loops on the hook. I have to do the same thing into the next stitch over. So taking my crochet hook, going in, grabbing this yarn and pulling it through. I have 3 loops on the hook. I'll yarn over and pull through all 3. And now I'll just decrease 3 more times and I'll be done with round 5. After you decrease 5 times, you have this little opening. So let's take some stuffing and just insert a little bit in. I think I have too much. Okay, so after you stuff it, you can now cut off some yarn. I already cut mine off. And then I'm just going to pull this through. And then we're going to do the same thing when we close it. So as we did earlier, you just want to take your crochet hook, insert it into the next stitch, and then take this yarn and pull it through. And I know I got some stuffing through as well. Try not to do that. And I'm just going to repeat that until I make it all the way around, and then I'll pull on the yarn. So I'll show that one more time. I'm going to take my crochet hook, insert it into the next stitch, take the yarn and pull it through. So now I'll repeat that by going around until I make it back to the other side. So once you make it to the other side, you can now pull on your yarn and it will close it up just a bit. And we're going to weave it in the same, just take your crochet hook, insert it through the stitch, pull this yarn through, don't pull all the way, have enough of this loop here. I'm going to take my yarn and pull it through. And then I'm going to stuff the yarn back in by taking my scissors and just pushing it in. You can use the back of your crochet hook, but mine is too big, so I'm going to take my scissors and I'll stuff this back in. I'm stuffing it in because I'm not going to sew this on, I'm going to hot glue because I always like to take the easy way out. I don't like sewing at all. Alrighty, so this is what the nose looks like, and I feel like we should do all of the smaller pieces first before I move on to the hat. So before we go to the hat, let's do the beard next. Okay, so we're not going to sew on the beard just yet. We're just going to cut the yarn. So take your white or whatever color you want for the beard, and I like to fold mine in half, and then I'll measure it from, not the top part because it's not going to be that long, but I'm going to start probably my third row down. You can do your third or fourth, it doesn't matter because it's going to be covered by the hat. Just make sure it's not too low, and then I'll measure it to the bottom of the egg or the body, and then you want to cut off this amount. So let me cut it off really quick. So now with this piece of yarn, you can use it as a guide to cut off the rest of the hair for the beard. So you're just going to measure it up next to the rest of your yarn and cut off some more. And honestly, you do want this to be a little bit longer than you need because it's better to have it longer because you can always trim it down. But if it's too short, you obviously can't make it grow. But we're going to attach this later. So right now, just make sure you cut off enough white yarn or whatever color you're using so we can attach it later. But again, I do make mine a little bit longer than I need in the beginning. So the hat is going to be covered like right about at your second or your third row from the top part. So just make sure it's kind of long first, and then I'll be back after this. Here's all of my white pieces of yarn that I have cut out already. So now I'm just going to set this aside because again, we're working on all of the accessories before we attach everything. Next, we're going to work on our felt hearts, and I feel like I don't really have to show this because I feel like most people have made hearts, but I will show it anyways. So take whatever color felt you're using. So I have a small piece right here because the hearts we're making aren't that big. You can make it bigger if you want, but I like to put about 4 on top of my hat. So even with this little piece, I'm not using the whole thing. So what I'm going to do is just take one side and fold it in half. And then I'll take my scissors, and you can draw one half of a heart to make it even, but I'm just going to just cut it randomly and hope that it turns out cute. So at the top part, you want to just curve for the top of the heart, and then now you want to go at an angle and hit it straight at the corner. So I'm just going to cut it just like that, and I feel like this one might look ugly. Okay, so that's my heart. I feel like I need to fix the middle, so I'm just gonna fold it in half and cut it straight at the middle. And here is a heart. So cut out as many hearts as you want to add to the hat. I usually put 4 on. I cut out some extra because I'm planning to make a gnome for myself as well. This one's going to the hospice, but I gotta make one for myself. So go ahead and cut out your hearts, and then next we're going to move on to the arms. We are now moving on to the arms. So this is the one that I already pre-made. We're going to start off with the color you're using for your hands. So mine is going to be the lighter shade of pink, and we're going to start off the same with our slip knot. So let's take our yarn and fold it in half just like this. Let's twist it. With this side of the loop, I'm going to take this yarn and pull it through. Now I'm going to insert my hook through the loop, tighten up this yarn, and now we're going to create our chain of 2. So let's yarn over and pull it through. That was 1. I'm yarning over again and pulling over for 2. So next we're going to do a single crochet of 5 this time into our first chain. So here is our first chain. Let's go in, grab some yarn and pull it through. We have 2 loops on the hook. Let's yarn over and pull through both. Now because all of this was basically a single crochet, again I'm not going to repeat this, so I'm just going to go ahead and single crochet 4 more times because we need a total of 5 in round 1. After you finish round 1, I was gonna say round 5. After you finish round 1, you can place your stitch marker into your last stitch, and then now we're going to move on to round 2, where we're going to increase into every stitch. So into our first one, let's do an increase. So that was 1 single crochet. I'm doing another one into the same stitch. And now I'm just going to repeat this all the way through, and this time we're going to end up with 10 stitches total because we started off with 5. So I'm just going to do an increase into each one of these stitches, and once I get 10 in total, I will be done with round 2. So now moving on to round 3, this is going to be our last round with this color, and in this round all we're doing is single crocheting, so you will still end up with 10 stitches in total for round 3. After you finish round 3, this is what it looks like. Now I'm going to show you how I color change. So let's first take out our stitch marker, and then let's take our scissors and cut off some of this yarn. You do need a little bit so we can close up this end, but you don't need too much. I just cut off this amount. I don't know how long that is, but after you cut off your yarn, you can now just pull your yarn straight out, and then you're going to take your threading needle. Here's my threading needle. I'm just going to take my yarn and put it through the loop, this little opening. Oops. I had to insert it off camera because it kept splitting, but now what you're going to do, so you can see this is where your yarn is currently at, and this is your next stitch over. So let's take our threading needle and go into that stitch, just go straight through. So here's my needle, straight through that stitch, and I'm just going to pull it out. Now going back to where this first stitch was, where you originally had your yarn, we're going to go back in. So I'm pulling the yarn towards me now, and I'm going to put the needle into the middle of this stitch. Just push out through the back. So let me show that again. So here is the full stitch. I'm going into the middle of it, and I'm just pushing out. And let me show you what it looks like. So you can see this looks like a stitch, but I don't want it to be there because I don't want to get confused. So now I'm just going to pull tightly, and it goes away. So you should have a total of 10 in this round because we didn't change anything. All we did was do an invisible closure. So now let's get our darker pink yarn. Okay, so I have my darker pink, and I'm now just going to take my crochet hook, and let's find out where we left off, or what am I saying? Okay, so here's where I left off. So I'm just going to take my crochet hook and insert it into that stitch. And then I'm going to take my pink yarn, my darker one, and insert it through that stitch. And now I'm just going to tie a knot. And then I'm going to take my crochet hook, and I'm going to insert my hook through that same stitch that I tied my knot. And I'm going to grab my pink yarn and pull it through. Okay, so now I'm going to single crochet into the next stitch, and you have to make sure you're crocheting into the right stitch, because remember how we ended off with that lighter pink? You might go into the wrong stitch if you're not counting right. So here's how we can count. So where we have this knot attached, you're counting that as 1, because that's the last one you're going to single crochet into. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So this is where I should start my first single crochet. Now again, the reason you're not going into this right here, that's because that's the yarn that we pulled through that looks like a stitch. Well, it kind of is a stitch, but you don't want to go into that one because that's not a part of our round. So go into your first stitch and you do your single crochet. Again, you should have a total of 10 in this round. So I just did 1. I'm going to single crochet until I make it to 10. I currently have 9 single crochets in this round, and remember I did say you're going to end off with a single crochet into where you tied your knot. So this is where I tied my knot, so I'm going in with my last single crochet, and now that makes it 10 stitches total in this round, and this is round 4. So I'm going to take my stitch marker and place it into that last stitch, and you're now done with round 4. Now we're just going to create the length of the arm. So just single crochet rounds 5 to round 9. Also, if you want to make sure your pink yarn is secured, you can tie these knots together, but I find that I don't really need to. But if you just want to make everything extra secure, you can just take these pieces and then just tie them together to make a little knot. But I'll just tie one really quick just to show you guys. But I'm just going to take these two colors, tie a little knot, and I'm just going to use it as stuffing anyway so I can push it back in. But now I'm just going to do rounds 5 to round 9. They're all single crochets, so you're still going to end up with 10 in each round. And then after you finish those rounds, I'll show you how to close this off. After you finish your 5 to 9 round, this is what it should look like. Now we can just take some stuffing and add it into the arm. You don't need too much. Then we can remove our stitch marker, and we're going to cut off some yarn. You will need some excess to sew this closed, so I'm just going to take about that much. And now I'm just going to pull my yarn straight out, and let me get my threading needle. So I'm just going to insert my yarn through, and now we're going to sew this closed. So what I'm going to do is just take my threading needle from one side, push it through a stitch and out through the next stitch. And then I'm just going to pull straight out, and I'll repeat that until this is fully closed. So going into the next stitch, out through the other. We are gluing this on because, again, like I mentioned, I don't want to sew it. If you want to sew it, you can go ahead and sew it, but girl, that's not for me. So I'm just going to do this one more time. And then, actually, let's do another time into this last one. So this is what it looks like. This is going to be my flat side that'll glue it onto the body, and then this is what the front will be. So just to make this secured, we can insert our threading needle into a stitch. Actually, let me go sideways. And then remember, for this, we don't like to pull it all the way out. We just want to make sure we do have a loop that's left. So you can see my thumb is holding onto this so I don't pull all the way through. And now that we have this tiny loop, let's take our threading needle, put it through the loop, and just pull on it. And then with the rest of this, you can stuff it back in. I'm just going to insert my threading needle through a couple stitches, so I can just pull it. And then now I'm just going to stuff the rest back in with my scissors. So now after you finish one arm, go ahead and make the other. If you need a reminder, just rewind this video. And then next I'm going to move on to the hat.